Hello YouTube, it's that time. Dimensions End Tier 15 is coming real soon, and I got the guide to help y'all out. It is releasing 2 AM UTC September 7th, and it's coming with Ultimate Odin and Noctis' rework along with his LD and burst weapon. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you all to please like the video. It helps with the algorithm and spreads it around. Share the video on Reddit, Facebook for example, Twitter to get the word out. Drop a comment with your planned team so we can get some ideas and discussions going. And please note that I'll be responding to all the comments, so feel free to drop any questions about who to run. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I do both Japanese and global versions of the City of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Help the channel grow. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers soon. I do monthly guides working with the Tonberry Troupe aside from other assorted videos. And lastly, check out my playlist in the card I'm showing on the screen right now for my other Dimensions and guides in case you need assistance elsewhere. One thing before we keep going, I want to shout out all the people I couldn't do this without. First off, Tonberry Troupe at tonberrytroupe.com. Y'all already know them, they do the infographics, great stuff, great info. I work with them all the time. Mac Knoll with the City of Info, he does these great in-depth boss guides. Sometimes I gotta double check them just to know how exactly a boss works. Great guy, runs Call to Arms, definitely check his site out. You all know Rem, who runs the cityofdb.com. Greatest resource on the planet for this game. Where will we be at without him? Lastly, I want to shout out OOTracker.com. It's a great resource for tracking anything related to Opera Omnia, including your Entropy teams. I use this to keep track of who I currently have slotted in, what resources I've invested into them, and anything else. I can also check out other Entropy clears. It's a great resource just for this kind of content. Now to go over the layout of the video. This will be in the description with timestamps and also the pinned comment. First, I'm going to go over the stage theme, then the recommended roles for the stage. After that, I'm going to provide a boss breakdown with a description of the bosses and a strategy to tackle them. Lastly, I'm going to go over who to bring to the stage, who are the top units, throw out some example teams, and then tell y'all who I'm going to be running. Now to go over the theme of this tier. On the screen briefly is going to be the Square Enix slide. I'm going to be elaborating a bit more on what they've put here. First things first, magic resist. If you plan to bring a magic unit and they don't imperil their own element, be sure to bring an enchanter to get the most out of them, or else they're going to be dealing pretty much no damage. As for shifting resistances, the first wave has a stance where it is resistant to thunder and wind, and then it switches to a different stance conditionally that resists ice. There are powerful, hard-hitting AoE attacks, brace for impact, avoid break, the usual. Lastly, the big thing of note in the second wave is that the bosses get really fast. They have high speed. They can kill you if you aren't careful, so keep that in mind when you're building your team. Now I'm going to get into recommended roles for this tier. This section is not a list of required roles or units, just those that I feel will give you the best performance on this stage. In this list, I am going to be ignoring magic units as they generally won't work without an imperil, also keeping in mind the resistances on the first wave. It's also going to be weighted towards somewhat recent units as I'm trying to make this guide useful for when the stage drops immediately. Be flexible as deemed necessary. The first role that I think you should consider covering is Instant Break / Gravity. There are some crazy brave gains on the stage sometimes, and having someone who can pop it instantly is very, very valuable. As of late, the most recent unit to do this is Gabranth. Trey, who applies an instant break debuff, is also very useful for this role. Kais, while he does not instant break, he does set enemies brave to 0 and launch, so if you need an emergency shave, he'll be good as well. Zidane is also a notable unit who can shave down brave very quickly with his one-turn mug after using his EX. The next role I'd consider covering is an umbrella I'd like to call turn manipulation. Under that umbrella, I'd put two sub-roles, and that'd be speed / turn rate down, which would include Quistis, Garland, and Zidane. Also, all great choices. Machina would also fall under this, as his framed debuff has speed down on it. Machina also fits the next role I'm going to cover, the sub role I should say, which is Turn Shifter, which would be Noctis with his turn manipulation on his plus skills and LD, Machina on his high turn rate, Furious Blades, and Rem with her turn swap, just giving you full control, somewhat control, over when your team goes. The next role I think it's important to cover is damage reduction / tanking. There's a couple units that can fit the bill here. One is Gabranth with his party brave damage reduction and attack down on the bosses. Desh with his stance based brave reduction for the party. Porum, who has defense up along with HP damage reduction for the party. Leon, who can completely negate non-elemental attacks. Nine, who is a bit of a hybrid unit, damage dealer / HP damage mitigation / heals, etc. And lastly, I'm going to list Bosch, as he is unkillable. His rework and LD make him great, and he's taking all AoE HP damage for the party while also keeping taunt up to keep the party pretty much completely out of danger. In the most flexible category, we have damage dealers. Top of the line here is probably going to be Noctis, who is freshly reworked with his LD. Squall's still excellent. Garland will work because he is not magic. Machina is also newly released DPS. His turn manipulation is still great, and he has that speed down debuff like I mentioned earlier. And lastly, we have Trey, who's also bringing instant break and sustained damage, including off-turn stuff for the party. And now what you've been waiting for, the bosses. I'm going to be breaking this down wave by wave. First, we have wave 1. You will be met by the Lunatic Flan Medley, who is the boss from Garnet's event in Lost Chapter, and its corresponding ads who align in color with it. When the fight starts off, it's going to be resistant to thunder and wind. It's going to open up with Split, in which it spawns the small flans with the same current resistances. These ads are not really a problem, all they can do is brave and HP attack, so if you keep them broken, you'll be fine. However, once the ads are killed, the main boss is going to use Generate Body. It's going to gain about 40k-ish brave, depending on the progress in the fight and whether or not you have max brave buffs, and it's going to gain a ton of brave damage reduction. As soon as it's broken, it's going to use High Split, in which it resummons the ads, raises its own attack and max brave. It's going to grant itself a regen buff. If you are unable to break it before its turn after it uses Generate Body, it's going to HP attack and change to the next stance. If it's in the Thunder and Wind resist stance, it will change to blue on top and it will resist ice, and vice versa. From what I can tell, it's only really going to HP attack if it has a high amount of brave at the moment, or if it's in Generate Body mode. So if you pop it, you'll be good. And keep in mind, as soon as you pop it, Generate Body will go off, but if you don't, it's going to stay with that brave reduction. Going into overall strategy for the fight, you really want to keep the ads broken so you don't get HP attacked by them. Killing them, be prepared to pop the main body as soon as possible, unless you're ready to eat the HP attack. Instant break, such as Trey and Gabranth, will be able to get rid of this high brave gain immediately, resummon the ads, and pretty much take all the heat off of you. You can also turn manipulate around this brave gain until you can break it in time with characters such as Noctis or Machina, who can speed around it. Lastly, you can just tank the hit and break afterwards and handle the color change, which is not a problem if you bring someone who can handle the damage like Porum, Bosch, or Nine, or really anyone who can eat the attack. All in all, this first wave is pretty simple. As long as you can deal with the massive brave gain and the cycles that the flan goes through, this should be relatively manageable. Now we have wave 2. This wave is a bit trickier, and there's two nasty yet familiar bosses that can really mess you up if you're not careful. On the right, we have the source of your likely PTSD, the Lunatic Count Steam, notorious for being the Deuce Lost Chapter boss. There is no longer a physical resist and or counter, so worry not, you won't get slapped if you try anything like that. It's going to open by building steam, which raises its speed, attack, and defense. Be prepared for it to jump in the turn order very quickly. This thing has hard-hitting AoE and single target attacks. It can grant itself attack up after using its flame ball attack, and it has Brave plus HP attacks, again single target and AoE. The biggest thing to note for this boss is that it will enrage if it's killed last, removing all of its debuff and ramping up its Brave damage reduction to insane levels. Getting into the strategy for this guy, kill it first and kill it quickly to avoid the enrage. If you're being targeted, and this includes all attacks, try to avoid being broken. This thing is pretty unpredictable. A break from a Brave or HP could pretty much spell the end of your run. And if it's not the end, you'll be severely crippled and possibly set up for death very soon. Per usual, tanking and or attack down remove a lot of the difficulty in these one-shots, so play accordingly, and even if you don't have them, just be safe. On the left, we have the Lunatic Spineclad. This is the boss back from Charlotta's Lost Chapter again very quickly. Thank you to Magnol with the City info, providing some of the info I was able to use to figure out this boss. This boss functions pretty similarly to the Charlotta Lost Chapter boss, minus the resistances. It's on about a 3 to 4 turn loop. It's going to have some hard-hitting Brave attacks, and it's going to charge at the end of its cycle. When it charges, and keep in mind it's not going to use a turn to do this, it's going to be a follow-up after one of its moves. It's going to buff Max Brave, Attack, Defense, I Brave, Speed, and Crit. That is 6 generic buffs. It's also going to gain a significant amount of Brave. Afterwards, it's always going to do Spear Ray, which is a 9-hit random Brave hit plus AoE HP attack. This hits somewhat hard. If it breaks you, the boss is going to gain a lot of Brave, and you're probably going to take a lot of HP damage. It has a move Scatter, which can inflict attack down, speed down, and poison. Its Breath Barrage can increase its Brave after using a Fire Magic Brave attack and also give it high turn rate. Its Tail Crush is going to increase its Brave and remove the target's generic buffs. And Sword Tail will give it an instant turn if it breaks you or hits someone who's already broken. Strategy wise, the less damage you take, the better. You need to stay frosty for the charge attack. Debuffs, especially those that are framed, will help prevent the guy from buffing itself with the generics. Generic debuffers can also push off the ones that are produced in that moment. Focus on shaving the Brave down, and if you've brought some sort of mitigation in the form of a tank or something along those lines, this move is fairly choreographed, so you can set that up accordingly. If you do take a chunk of HP damage after this attack, make sure to heal it up as fast as possible. This guy is fast, as is the Count Steam, and you can get gimped very quickly if you're not ready. Lastly, you should be killing this after the Count Steam. If you kill this guy first, Count Steam will enrage, and that will be a huge problem you do not want to deal with. Just make sure to protect your neck. Shout out to Wu-Tang. You should be good by the end of this wave, and the fight will be over. You have completed the tier. Now for my opinion on the top units for this stage. As always, this is not a requirement, this is a recommendation. Feel free to build a team and see if it works to your best ability. My personal MVP for this stage is going to be Gabrant. His instant break solves big problems on both waves of the fight. The attack down plus Brave damage reduction gives the party a lot of safety for any nonsense that may crop up. On top of that, he just does overall solid damage, and he's definitely putting in work when you bring him on your team. Alternatives for him could, for example, be Trey, who is providing his instant break debuff, which everyone in the party can access. Fran, who provides a ton of useful debuffs, which include attack down. And Afmao, who has excellent auras, Brave regen, party Brave damage reduction, debuff immunity, all that, you name it, you know she's great. My next personal MVP is going to be Noctis. He has massive DPS with his fresh new rework. He potentially has a burst weapon. He has crazy turn manipulation now, not only for himself but with the party, with his LD, and he is providing launch, which can help boost your score. Potential alternatives for Noctis could be Machina, who has high turn rate on his HP plus and instant turn on his LD and skill 1. Machina is also providing a frame speed down, which is helpful for getting around the bosses and not letting them act as much as they'd want to. Kane, who is raw DPS, but he hits extremely hard and his EX delays all the enemies. And for just big damage, you have Squall, who is still very relevant and can be used very well on this stage. My final MVP for this stage is going to be Bosch. He is coming back with a rework and LD. His auras are godly. His taunt duration has improved, so he can pretty much keep it up indefinitely, provided you weave LD in there. He cannot die to anything in this tier. He will always eat the HP attack and heal back up to 50%. And he's also providing battery to the team on top of all of that. Replacements for Bosch could be, for example, Leon, who is turning most of the brave attacks in this tier into battery for the party for whoever gets attacked. 9, who has brave damage, shields, and HP damage mitigation. Or Porum, who can pretty much shut out any HP damage as long as you hit her skill 2 or EX. Just throwing some team examples out there now, but you could run, for example, Gabranth, Noctis, Paladin Cecil, Machina, Leon, Saz, Bosch, Kais, Noctis, Fran, Noctis, Leon, Rem, Machina, Trey, Leon, Trey, Ramza, Garnet, Aphmau, and Trey. You can also duo it with Aphmau and Gabranth, surprisingly. The possibilities are honestly quite flexible. As for me, I believe I'm going to try and run Gabranth, Machina, and Leon, but I never stick to this, so just stay tuned for when I actually record it, you feel me? And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like the video, help me out with the algorithm, share this on Reddit and Facebook, comment with your planned team and any questions you might have so I can respond and help you out potentially. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell, stay up to date with my channel, and check out these playlists to help you through any other dimensions and stages. Hope y'all have a good one, stay safe out there, and peace.